Squirrels! So hello, and welcome to another Legends of Runeterra video. My name is Chris, and today we will be doing something different indeed. I know I say that pretty much every video at this point, but this time we're doing a tier list, so this is very, very different to anything I've done before, and today we are going to be tier listing the champion design of each of the champions in Legends of Runeterra. This does not include Aphelios, as you know, we haven't played with him yet. I don't want to, jump the gun and say it's bad or good design when we could find out it's either. But with the ones that we have been playing with, you can see I've got all the champions here. I didn't organize. I organized them by mana cost, but then I've come back to it and it's organized it by letter. Some of them are a bit off, as you can see. Like Anivia is 7 mana, and the cards are slightly cut off because that's just the way the website worked. But you can see we've got all the champions there to look at, and we are going to be tier listing them based on their design. So this is not a power level discussion. That is the first thing. Please listen to this. This is not which are the best champions in the game. This is how good do I think is their design, and we're going to measure that by these 8 criterion, really 7, but we'll get into that as well. So these are the criterion that we will be deciphering which tier each champion in terms of design go into. Some of them kind of come from the dev team themselves and stuff that they've said about champions before, and some of it is what, like, if they, if Riot came to me and said, Chris, how should we go about designing champions? This is what I would create for them. I would create this 8-point thing for them to say, tick this off as you go, and if you can tick them all, then you've got a very good champion, in my opinion. So first one is flavorful. Now, before, I don't know, do Americans spell it without the U? I know they have a weird thing where, they spell everything like 5-year-olds. They just miss out U's in certain words. So don't come at me, anyone, if you're American or spell English in the American way, because flavor has a U here. If it doesn't in America, I'm not sure. Anyway, flavorful is the first one, and this is one that I don't know enough about. I'm just going to put it out there. I don't know about, the lore of Runeterra and the different champions and all that. So I'm not actually going to comment on this one. I haven't heard really anyone on Reddit or elsewhere complain about the flavor of these champions. In fact, it seems to be quite positive that they often do capture the essence of these champions quite well. So I'm just going to, defer to that and assume that is all good. So flavor, I'm not going to touch, but I think it is important for champion design and using ideas that already exist. It's important that you capture those ideas, but I think for the most part people seem to agree that the flavor is fine. Oh, I should mention this could be split into 2 parts or 1 part. I don't know yet. You'll know if it says part 1 or not. Depends how long it takes. So number 2, the card makes sense. Now this is one that the dev team have referred to before, and it basically, what this means is, can it see play? Does it fit within its deck? In a deck that it should fit in? Do you want to play the champion? This is something that the dev team have talked about themselves early on. That's a key thing for them, and obviously it's kind of a basic thing to pass. Almost all the champions will pass it pretty easily because most of them are good enough, and make sense within certain decks. 3 is unique design. This one I think is, again, pretty self-explanatory. You don't want 2 champions that feel exactly the same and do exactly the same thing, because then you'll just end up playing one over the other all the time, right? So you want each champion to feel unique and stand out and, do their own thing. Number 4, it's a build-around card and an interesting level condition. Now, this to me is sort of the heart of Runeterra champions. The Runeterra champions, because of the way that they're designed and they have level ups, this is very different to other card games where, you have these specific cards that have, ways of improving the card itself if you build your deck around them. That's what level conditions are, basically, right? You have this version of a card, you level it up, and it becomes a more powerful version of the same card. So, that to me is really interesting and making things unique. It's another way to make things unique is a level up condition as well. And I think the best champions in my opinion, are ones with, you know, different level up conditions, more interesting ways of playing the games, etc. Now 5 and 6 are one that I think some people will disagree with. And again, this is just my criteria. You know, you can disagree. You might end up completely disagreeing with this list because you disagree with the criteria. Because this is what I'm going off. To me, 5 and 6 are quite important. To me, a champion should have a powerful level up, but an average, I've called it level 1, you know, first side of the card. What do I mean by that? To me, a champion on its, you know, first condition, where, you know, you just play it, it hasn't leveled up yet, should be about an average follower. It shouldn't feel too good. It shouldn't feel like, oh, well, you know, now they've got a massive advantage because they happen to play this really good card. But then the level up should be, you know, you've built your deck in a certain way that means that now I get a really powerful card. I have this average card in my deck and I can play it. But now that I've done all these things for this card, now I have a really powerful effect. That to me is how a champion should be designed. Because it forces you down a more synergistic path. I think a problem other card games have had is, you know, essentially, you know, people just put in, you know, oh, I'm just going to put in all the best cards. You know, they have no synergies really with each other. They just happen to be the best cards, and therefore that makes it the best deck. And that to me is really frustrating. And because of the champions, you know, Runeterra kind of forces you away from that, and it forces you, here is some, you know, if you can pull off this synergy, you're going to get a powerful effect. And to even further that point, I think that 5 and 6 are really important to pulling off a really well-designed champion. But number 7 is crucial as well, and that is it can fit in multiple decks. This one is harder to achieve, of course, especially when you have a build-around card that, you know, you really want to create this synergy with. You know, you think, well, aren't you pinholing it into one deck? Well, certain champions, yes, that has been the case, and we'll get into that, but others very much not. Others champions, you know, have that synergy around them, but also can fit in many different decks. And that, I think, is a big positive for some cards. And, you know, is sort of, to me, a big difference between the best designed champions and those who are not as well designed. Synergistic champ spell, pretty obvious, right? Again, you want to build the synergy, and the card itself should be synergistic with itself, basically, is just what the champ spell is adding to. So with that said, let's dive into the first of the tier rankings. And for every champion, there'll be, you know, the little thing that tells you when I'm talking about that champion, so that you can, you know, then go on and just watch the champions that you want, if that is what you want. So let us begin, and we begin with Aurelion Sol, who, should I zoom in a bit here? Maybe not that much. Maybe something like that. Let's go for that, I think. Is that even better? Let's go here. Aurelion Sol. So Aurelion Sol, as I say, flavorful. I'm not going to really touch on that because I don't know enough. The card makes sense. Can it see play within decks? I think absolutely. That one's, you know, Aurelion Sol fits within decks. He's you know, a big end game finisher. Does everything that you kind of want. Unique design. Is Aurelion Sol unique? I think that very much Aurelion Sol is unique. One, he's 10 mana, and he's the only 10 mana champion so far. He, you know, has a big effect. It's kind of, you know, game winning, you know, if you let him stay on the board and level up. So I think absolutely unique. We can tick that one off as well. Is Aurelion Sol a build around card, and does he have an interesting level condition? Now, this is, I would say overall for Sol, that he isn't so much of a build-around card. He's more of a card that you can throw into a deck. But the level condition is, you know, somewhat synergistic with himself. He will, you know, often get you. He invokes a celestial card, you know, of 7 cost or more, which will, you know, potentially get you a big creature, which then can help him level up. So there is some synergies there, and you could build around him in a way that does try to level him up. Of course, you could just play a bunch of dragons with high attack, and I think that's obviously probably what they were going for. So you can do it. So I will sort of give him a yes just about on number 4. Does Sol have a powerful level up? Now, this is an interesting one because I think at first people would have told you no. When people first saw this card, I think people would have told you that Sol's level up isn't that powerful at all. But the truth of the matter is If you have invoked already quite a few times in the game, and you have those cards in hand, then Asol does become, you know, a pretty powerful level up. So I am willing to give Asol that. And for a 10 mana card, again, for number 6 here, this average level 1 and 5 really in the powerful level up. Of course, a level 1 champion shouldn't have as much power as you know, Asol as a 10 mana champion, of course, because the mana cost is different, so we have to, you know, sort of balance it out. So you could say that Asol for 10 mana, his level up maybe isn't powerful enough, but I think over time he's kind of proven that isn't quite the case, because he will still see play. And I think, again, average level 1, I can just about give him a tick. Actually, I think the average level 1 for a 10 mana card, he does about what you'd expect for a 10 mana card. I think, you know, he sticks down on the board. He's got Fury, you know, he's obviously got a big body. He gives you an extra card each turn. So I would say, yeah, that's about average for a 10 mana card overall. Can Asol fit in multiple decks? This is an interesting one because, of course, he can fit in multiple decks in that you could play him in the maybe Thresh Asol. You could play, obviously, Targon Invoke, Targon Allegiance. You could play Dragons with Demacia. You could play Targon's Peak if you wish. So I would say, yes, Asol can fit in multiple decks, but might not be the core focus. As I mentioned before, his build around is kind of iffy. And a synergistic champ spell, the Sky's Descent, I would think is a yes. He's a dragon. He invokes Sky's Descent, obviously a big board wipe. I would say that yes, Asol does do that. So overall, we can give Asol a, I think. I think he isn't quite build around enough to see S, but he is, you know, a pretty well-designed champion overall. And so we move on to Anivia. Anivia, it says 7 mana here. Of course, we know now Anivia is a 6 mana card. This is just an old version I grabbed, I guess. And so let's go through. Card makes sense. Can see play? Absolutely. Unique design. Unique design, I would say Anivia with the Eggnivia thing and all that. Very much so. Build around card, interesting level condition. Now this one is, you know, more interesting because, of course, Anivia's level up is just get to round 10. Now, that's the same as Karma, and when we get to Karma, we'll talk about that. But for Anivia, I think it makes more sense because Anivia is in the region with ramp. And therefore, the idea of getting to 10 mana and being enlightened makes more sense for Anivia than perhaps it does for Karma, but we'll get there when we talk about Karma. Is it a build around card though? It does have some build around synergies. You know, you can go in for killing Anivia as much time as you want. The Anivia deck that exists today, I would say, is quite a synergistic deck with Anivia, of course, with Rekindlers and with Harrowings and the idea of just killing and reviving as many Anivias as you can. I think that is pretty synergistic, and I would say that therefore you can build around Anivia. Does Anivia have a powerful level up? Well, I would say that you know, anyone who's stared down Anivia for long enough knows that it is a pretty powerful level up. The fact that it deals 2 to everything, particularly if you can get multiple Anivias down, as I mentioned in that deck, in the Anivia deck, is a pretty powerful level up. And obviously, removing Anivia can be quite tricky as well. Does Anivia have an average level 1? Again, I think very much so. The fact that, you know, you can kill Anivia and then, you know, all you have to do is get rid of a 0/1 to, you know, just fully rid of yourself. And, you know, let's say you do that on the turn she comes down, then you've got 3 turns to do it. So I would say Anivia probably is an average level 1. You could even argue she's a below average level 1. But remember, we're talking about followers here. We're not talking about to other champions. So, you know, for a 6 mana card, yeah, she's fine, right? Can fit in multiple decks. Now, this is one where you could go, can Anivia really fit in multiple decks? Like, how many non-Shadow Isles Anivia decks have existed? And that, I think, is a big sticking point with Anivia. How do you build Anivia outside of Shadow Isles? I don't think she makes that much sense anywhere else, so I would probably give that a fail. And a synergistic champ spell, the Harsh Winds. Harsh Winds, of course, will get you to the late game, which helps Anivia. It's a defensive spell, so yeah, I would say overall that Harsh Winds is pretty synergistic. Maybe not the most synergistic, but decent. So, considering we have a level up condition that's kind of meh, and can't really fit in multiple decks. I think I'm going to give Anivia a B overall. I'm not going to go like each one, but I think I'll go like high S, low S, high A, low A, and just kind of do it that. But I'm not going to go like each one individually. So I'd probably say Anivia is like a low B, but obviously we don't have anything else in B, so we'll see, right? Ashe. Ashe is our next one. And I'm going to try not to be biased here, but obviously I do have some of my favorite champions. I say Ashe is probably one of them. But this is why I create the criteria, so that it's not just, me going, oh, well, I like this champion, so S. We're going to go through each of the criteria for each of them. Card makes sense. Can I see play? Yep, the card makes sense. Absolutely. Unique design. I mean, she's the Frostbite champion, essentially, so other things do have Frostbite, Sejuani, for instance, but I would say that it's a fairly unique design, the attack giving the Frostbite. Does anything else attack and, I know obviously, Misfortune and Anivia do their things, but not, directly impact other units. There very well could be that I'm just not thinking of, but I can't think of any. Build around card, interesting level condition. And it, she certainly is a build around card. You put in the Frostbites, the interesting level condition. I would say so. You want to Frostbite a bunch, so it kind of forces you into a certain deck. So yeah, I would say absolutely. Ashe does have that. A powerful level up. Obviously, the fact that 0 attack cards can't block, again, synergistic with what you want to do. She creates that herself, and when you level up, of course, you get the Crystal Arrow, which you can then use potentially to just win the game in one turn. And an average level 1. I think Ashe does have an average level 1, because if you have if you have 2 3-attack units, then, unless they have a combat trick, you can't attack with Ashe. So I would say Ashe probably is an average level 1, maybe slightly above average, but not to the point where I think it's a failure in that at all. I think Ashe is about right for a champion. Can fit in multiple decks. Now, of course, Ashe's main deck, of course, is Ashe Noxus with Riven and Sejuani, maybe. That has been around for some time now, but I think Ashe is more flexible than you might think. You can play Ashe Harrowing with Thresh, which I think is a lot of fun as a deck, and essentially the idea is you create 5 Ashes attacking from the Harrowing, and obviously your opponent can't block any of them because they all Frostbite all of their units. You can play Ashe with Fiora, I guess, and Demacia in general. You could play Ashe with Noxcry and Arena if you wanted to. I guess that would be an offshoot of just the normal Ashe Noxus deck. But there are some decks, you can toy around with Ashe enough, I think, to make it worthwhile. And so I would probably give her a pass on that. And a synergistic champion spell. Of course, Ashe's Flash Free is very synergistic with what Ashe wants to do. So I would say Ashe overall is like an S tier. Again, I'd probably say low S tier, but an S tier champion in terms of her design. And on we go to the bald-headed man, Braum. Card makes sense. Can it see play? It's interesting because if you gave me old Braum, I might have thought maybe not. But this Braum, I think probably so. Unique design. Very unique. I think Braum brings about challenges that other champions don't, and is very much unique. Is he a build around card? Interesting level condition. Now this is potentially where you can bring Braum down. Is he a build around card? I would say that he probably it's an interesting level condition, right? Because it's very different to anything else. And I think it's not so much Braum's fault that he isn't as much of a build around card. I think he could be. And can be, and in certain Scargrounds mid-range decks, you can very much build around Braum now. And I think that was the kind of thing. For a lot of Braum's time, it has been a problem that you don't really build around Braum. You just kind of, when he was a 1/5, you just kind of used him as Braum. But nowadays, I think, you can go more in for making Braum good. Powerful level up. This is one that you can very much criticize Braum on, though. Is his level up worth going for? Now, it is pretty powerful. The fact that you get a Poro each turn, a Mighty Poro, and that all goes off. I think the problem is that it doesn't fit within the deck that they wanted to. Of course, they wanted Braum to be within like a Poro deck, right? The problem is, of course, Poros don't have a lot of way of, dealing the damage to Braum, finding extra ways to deal the damage to Braum. And so it's tough to level him up within that exact deck, and therefore you end up with a bunch of 3/3s with Overwhelm that kind of, it's okay, but it's not great. And it's not as powerful as I think I'd want it to be. So I think for that reason, I'm going to say the level up isn't quite there. And in a similar way, I think Braum, not as much as other champions, which we will get into, but Braum is suffering the same problems that some other champions have, where their level 1 is like better than average, and their leveled up version is like below average compared to other champions. And so you end up with this weird thing where if you're playing Braum, you're often just playing him for the level 1. And some champions suffer a lot from this, and we will get into those champions. But I think Braum, to a lesser extent, is also suffering from that. Can Braum fit in multiple decks? As I say, he doesn't make too much sense within the Poro deck, which, is kind of his deck. He can fit within Scargrounds with Vlad. You can play him with like Trundle and Bilgewater, I guess, but not too much else. And so I think overall I'd probably give this a fail as well. And synergistic champ spell, of course, take heart, it is very synergistic with Braum. So overall, I think I'm going to give Braum like a high C. I think he just doesn't fit within the deck that he was meant to, which is the Poro deck, and therefore it's tough to say, Braum is that well of a design champion. Okay, on to Darius. Darius, of course, makes sense. He does, he has decks that sort of Noxian Overwhelm deck, or with Freljord, or, sort of, we've seen Darrowing in the past. That kind of deck, I think, is very much in his rabbit house. Unique design. Well, he is just kind of a big meat stick with Overwhelm. But I would say he's unique enough. Probably just about. It's close. I mean, you can look at Alpha Wildclaw and look at Darius and just kind of squint, and they're kind of the same card. So I can understand, maybe the design isn't quite unique enough, and maybe people have a point. So build around card, interesting level condition. Well, the level condition actually is kind of interesting. Build around card, he is a build around card. I think you can't really, if you're putting Darius in your deck, you have to be somewhat aggressive. You can't just build like a really slow deck. Even in like Thresh Darius, which is a deck that I've seen around now and again. It's like Thresh, but with an emphasis on getting a bunch of units out quick and actually dealing damage to the opponents, so that you can get leveled up Darius, right? It's not like Thresh that is in a lot of other decks where it's quite slow. So I would say yes, you do have to build around Darius somewhat. Powerful level up. You do get a 10-6 Overwhelm, which can be a pretty big threat. So I'd say, yeah, for a 6-mana card, a 10-6 Overwhelm leveled up, pretty solid. And average level 1, as I say, it's actually below stats of Alpha Wildclaw, so you can very much say that Darius is just an average follower for 6 mana. Can fit in multiple decks. This is one way potentially you could get Darius on. Like, you're pretty much just going to be playing Noxian aggro, and you can splash other colors, but not. It's the same deck, right? It's the same deck. It's most likely an Overwhelm deck with an aggressive slant. Pretty much. There's not much else you can play him in, I don't think. And the champ spell, Decimate, is pretty synergistic. Of course, you want to bring their health down, and Decimate does that. So, overall, can't quite fit in multiple decks. Has some things about his level condition. Bit generic. I'm going to give Darius a B, I think. Like, fine, you know, it's whatever. It's not that exciting. It's Darius, right? And so on we go. And so we arrive at Diana, the Nightfall champion, of course, from Targon. Is she our first Targon champion? No, we've had Acel. So, in we go. Card makes sense. Can I see play? Yes, she fits within the Nightfall deck, of course, and she fits within other decks as well, so fine. Unique design. Is Diana unique? Of course, there are other Nightfall champions available, Nocturne being one, and Aphelios, of course, has some Nightfall aspect to him, but I would say that Diana does feel unique from Nocturne. They did a good job, I think, in terms of separating them whilst keeping them within the same deck. I think that was a pretty good job by them, to sort of have champions that weren't doing the exact same thing, but were close enough to fit within the same deck. So I'd say yes. Build around card, interesting level condition. Of course, you do want to activate the Nightfall enough times to level up Diana. You need to be within Nightfall somewhat, otherwise you're just not getting what Diana needs, and you essentially just end up with a 2-mana 2/2 quick attack. So I would say that she is a build around. You know, often Diana decks will run at least quite a few Nightfall cards, and obviously the Nightfall deck will run many of them. So I would say overall I would give that a yes, although there has been some instances of maybe, you know, not quite enough, but I would say yes. Powerful level up. Now again, we have to remember that we're talking about a 2-mana card, right? We're not talking about a game-winning card. All the champions we discussed so far have been 4+ mana, so you know this is kind of our first early game champion. We have to remember we're not talking about, you know, winning the game on the spot necessarily. So is Diana's level up powerful enough? I would say probably just about. What I like about her level up is that it still requires you to be within the synergy. It still requires, you know, that synergy point to increase her attack, etc., etc. Average level 1. You could say that Diana's level 1 is above average. Although if you had a 2-mana 2/2 follower with Diana's text, would it see play? It might see play in the Nightfall deck, but I'm not sure it would see too much play elsewhere. So I guess I'll give that a pass. And can fit in multiple decks. Of course, you got the Nightfall deck. You have kind of Targon Allegiance, although Aphelios might take that from Diana. Then you have like some mid-range options. She can fit within multiple decks. There's probably better options, but again, we're not talking about power level here. This is not. I mean, there is some power level discussion, but this isn't like a ranking of like, you know, is this the best deck in the game? I think Diana can fit in multiple decks. They might not be the best choice you can have, but she can just about do it. And synergistic champ spell Pale Cascade, of course, has Nightfall, and is, if we're being honest, probably one of the main reasons people run Diana is to potentially get extra copies of Pale Cascade because it's such a good card. And so Diana, I would probably therefore, it's like, again, like it's kind of like a sort of pass on a lot of these where it's like I'm not convinced by it. So I think I'm going to give Diana like a high B overall for her design. Not bad. Good effort. And so we come to Draven, and this is where it gets spicy. Can it see play? Absolutely. Unique design. Ooh. See, this is an interesting one. Unique design, right? Because I think one of the big problems with Riven, and some of you may agree with me, is that she is too close to Draven. Now, you could say Draven came first, so he had a unique design, and maybe Riven didn't. But I think those two have a bit of a problem where they feel a bit similar. They're both 3 mana. They both, you know, create cards for you to use in combat most of the time. Their level ups are a bit different, but for the most part, they feel kind of similar. They're both within the same region, of course. And so I'm not sure if I'm going to penalize Draven for that because he came first, but I suppose he is kind of like Riven. So, I mean, I guess I will. And sort of just looking at it from a holistic point of view. So, yeah. 4, build around card, interesting level condition. Now, this one is one where, I have to bring Draven down because Draven is completely self-contained. And this is something I realized, and I hadn't even realized before, and I don't think it's really true of any, or it might be true of some other champions, but Draven is completely self-contained. Nothing else creates spinning axes in the game. And I mean, I've got all the champions here, so I guess I will go through it with them all. But off the top of my head, he's the only one that can level himself with no help from anything else, which I think is a mistake. And his level up condition, therefore, isn't that interesting because you can just level him up with him. You don't need to build around Draven at all. Now, it's kind of interesting, right? Because he is in the deck that they want him to be. You know, he was created for the discard aggro deck, and he very much thrives within that deck. But at the same time, he's not really a build around card. You don't need to build around Draven. This is part of his strength, actually. And you'll see that this is definitely not a power ranking of, you know, how good the champion is as a card, because often the best champions are the ones that you don't need to level up. They're just really good anyway. But I see that as a downside. So powerful level up. I would say, again, this is like the Braum thing I was talking about, but to a bigger scale where the level up isn't that big of a difference to the average level 1. You kind of can't block Draven anyway. You know, I mean, you could chump block him, but that just feels bad. And the 3 damage, you know, it's like whatever. And so giving him Overwhelm doesn't change that much. Like now there's just less incentive to chump block again. So the level up, I would say, isn't powerful enough, and the 2 axes is like, yeah, okay, whatever. And the average level 1, the level 1 is too high, the level up is not high enough. And so you end up with this card that is just like, here's a good card. Don't do anything for it. It's just good. And that's kind of where we're at with Draven, I think. And I think that's the worst thing about champions. That's the champions that I'm going to grade the most harshly, is those champions where it's like, here's a good card. Don't bother with it. Don't bother, you know, doing what the card wants you to do because you don't need to. That I think is a failure in champion design. So can fit in multiple decks. Well, he can because he's just so strong. So yes, but why? And Whirling Death is synergistic with Draven. Of course, you can then just use 1x and use the Whirling Death. So I have no problem with that. But that means that Draven is going to be our first D. And I know he's a lot of people's favorite champion, and he is pretty fun to play with. But I think as a design, he just is completely self-contained. He's not doing what I want in my criteria, basically. And again, you can disagree with the criteria, but he's not doing what I want. So we move on, fittingly, to Elise, who is a champion I, again, have talked about before, and might be suffering some of the same fates as Draven. So let's see. Card makes sense. Can see play? Yes. Unique design. The spiders thing. Yeah. No other champion kind of does what Elise does. Yep. Build around card. You can build around Elise, of course. With the spiders, you can go all in for the spider deck. So yes, absolutely. Interesting level condition. Yeah, sure. I mean, it's spiders, right? When I say interesting, I mean, you know, it does something that isn't like, it does something that you have to build a deck around, I guess is what I'm saying. Powerful level up. Again, we're reaching the same problem as Draven, where the level up isn't powerful enough for what the level 1 does. The level 1 is too good. The power level of the level 2 isn't high enough. So you end up in this odd state where Elise played in a lot of decks. You actually, you know, like take the Go Hard deck, for instance. You didn't want to level Elise because you'd rather just have the extra spider. Well, that's a problem. That's not how the card should work. You should always want to level up the champion. That's what they're there for. The leveled up champion should always, in every situation, be a stronger version of the level 1. But for Elise, it's not always the case. Can fit in multiple decks, same as Draven. Yes, because she's so strong. And synergistic champ spell, well, yes, because the extra spiders, of course. I forget what that card is actually called. Crawling Sensation. Gives you more spiders, helps level up Elise. But unfortunately, again, it's the same fate as Draven. I would say even to an even worse degree, because there should be never a point where your level up is worse than your level 1. So we move on to Ezreal, and this is going to get spicy because we've just gone Draven and Elise and you know, put them in the lowest rank, and now we come to Ezreal as well. And I think, you know, these champions are sort of like faces of the games. Of course, they came out at the start as well, so you know, these are some of the faces of the game, and I'm sure that you'll all have a lot of feedback for me about these. Anyway, card makes sense, can see play. I think we can all say that's probably for sure. Unique design. I think Ezreal is, you know, very unique. I don't think there's much debate about that one. Build around card, interesting level condition. Again, targeting enemies. No one else does that. And you know, it forces you to build a deck in a very unique way. I think it's not just, you know, some of these champions have like cast spells. It's like, oh, well, it's a bit boring. But targeting enemies, it's like you have to find things that target things. I think that's probably one of the most interesting level conditions in the game. Powerful level up, of course. Average level 1, absolutely. You know, Ezreal is a level 1. He comes down and, you know, he's not that big of a threat. Sure, like if he can Mystic Shot something, it's a bit annoying, but you've essentially taken 1 damage to the face. Yeah, they got a Mystic Shot, and if it kills a unit, that is pretty bad, but you know, you've got answers as well, like Hush and Sharpside potentially to just pick off Ezreal anyway. So if Ezreal level 1 was just a follower, it would see some play, I think, which is where I want them to be. Can fit in multiple decks, absolutely. You can, you know, build around Ezreal. Of course, we see the Noxus variant, but we've seen like Ionia in the past, we've seen Bilgewater, we've seen Freljord as well. Shadow Isles would go hard. Yes. Synergistic Champ Cell, the Mystic Shot, of course, absolutely as well. And therefore, Ezreal is going to the very tippity top of the S tier. I think Ezreal is one of the best design champions in the game, if not the best. Overall, I think he is just an amazing design, very unique. It passes all of the criteria with absolutely flying colors. So absolutely Ezreal is up there. And so now we come to Fiora. So does Fiora make sense? Can she play? Absolutely. Does she have a unique design? I would think absolutely Fiora has a unique design. Build around card, interesting level condition. So Fiora, very much so you can build around Fiora, of course. And yeah, I mean, that's a pass for me with flying colors. It doesn't need that much explanation, I don't think. Powerful level up. Now, you could argue that Fiora's level up, you know, itself in terms of what it does for the card isn't that powerful. Essentially, you just get a 1/1 buff. But because you can win the game, I think we can agree that that is a powerful enough level up to be worth going for, you know, and that's essentially what I want. I want, again, like my problem with Elise is a card should never be worse in its leveled up state. At no point of any deck, it should even come close. And I think we can all agree Fiora is, of course, better leveled up and feels threatening. Average level 1, a 3-mana 3/3 challenger. Pretty average, I would say. That's about as average as you can get, I would say, overall. And can fit in multiple decks. Of course, we've seen Fiora Shen, but again, you can do like all-in Fiora with either Targon or Freljord. So I would say that Fiora decks, you can't just use Fiora as kind of a decent card, but you can also go more all-in Fiora. So I'd say, yeah, just about you can fit her in multiple decks. And Synergistic Jump Spell, of course, Riposte does exactly what Fiora wants. So again, I'm going to put Fiora up into the S tier, and I'm going to say high S tier as well. I think she passes a lot of these very well, and I know a lot of people don't like Fiora. People hate alternate win conditions for some reason, it seems. It does feel bad to lose against Fiora, but I think as a champion design overall, it's very well done. And I think alternate win conditions are actually more interesting for the game. It makes the game fresher. It changes the game in a way, and I think it makes for more interesting gameplay as well. So I give Fiora a flying pass with all that. And so we come to Fizz. Fizz. Card makes sense. Can I see play? This is where you have to start talking about this, right? So when they designed the champions that came out with Bilgewater, I'm almost certain what they actually wanted Fizz to be. They always design these champions with a deck in mind, right? I'm almost certain the deck that they wanted Fizz to go in is with Lee Sin. Now, the more you think about it, the more it makes sense. But I don't think anyone has ever played Fizz with Lee Sin, right? Because, of course, the two regions share attune cards. The two regions, they have the same level up condition, you know, roundabout. They both require playing spells. They both get effects when you do play spells. I'm fairly sure that's where they were going with it, but it just failed horribly. And does Fizz make sense? I would say with Hush in the game in its current state, Fizz might not make sense. Because you can just Hush Fizz, and he can't deal with that. If they changed Hush to a fast speed spell, Fizz would make sense, but he doesn't. Right now, Fizz does not make sense as a card, really. And so I think it's kind of sort of, maybe. I mean, can it see play? Yes. But does the card make sense for what it's trying to do? And like the effect it gives you? I'm not sure it does with Hush around, to be honest. With Hush being such a popular card, I don't know. Unique design, absolutely. Build around card, interesting level condition. You can build around Fizz. You know, you can build in the all-in Fizz deck with Start Seer or something like that. Level condition, I wouldn't say it's interesting, but, you know, at least it does require you to do something. You know, my gripe with, like, Enlightened is an example here. You know, at least it does require you to sort of build your deck in a certain way. Powerful level up, again, I'd have to say no. This is one of my big gripes with Fizz. Even for a 1-mana champion, I think his level up is considerably weaker than, for instance, the other two 1-mana champions. An average level 1, that I will grant him. Can fit in multiple decks. You can build all-in Fizz. You can put him in like a 1-drop deck. You can build elusives with Fizz. So I would say that that's probably a pass. And a synergistic champ spell. Sort of. Playful Trickster is like sort of a synergistic spell. I think you could do better, but I guess it's okay. Sort of. And so I think Fizz doesn't make that much sense. So I think I'm going to put him in D. High D. I think with the existence of Hush, Fizz doesn't make that much sense in the game. And I think my biggest gripe with champions, why I'm putting him here and not at the very bottom, is my biggest gripe is this example of a champion where, you know, the level 1 is too strong. I just really hate that, and this is kind of where the whole reason I made the video. But Fizz, again, yeah, just doesn't make that much sense. So we come to Misfortune. Misfortune is, can she make sense? Can she play? Absolutely. Of course, she fits within the Scouts deck, which is where obviously she was designed to fit in. Is she unique? I would say, probably so. You know, obviously the guns are blazing, all of that. Build around card, interesting level condition. Now, is Misfortune a build around card? You can very much debate that. You can go Scouts, and that is where Misfortune is best. And therefore, I would say, and that is building around Misfortune. When you go Scouts with Misfortune, you are building around Misfortune because you are, you know, utilizing her level up and doing all of that. So I would say that sort of. I'll give her a sort of for build around card. Powerful level up. Yeah, Misfortune when she levels up is powerful enough. The Overwhelm herself obviously synergizes with the bullets because, you know, the bullets will hit for 3 and then the Overwhelm will damage as well. So I would say, yeah, it's a pretty powerful level up. An average level 1, you could say that Misfortune, and I think I would say this, is above an average follower for a level 1 card. You know, she just does a lot. She essentially gives your challengers amazing trades. So I would say probably a bit above where Misfortune needs to be in terms of a level 1 card. So I'd say just slightly too high. It's not egregious, you know, because of course you can, if they've just played Misfortune on turn 3 and nothing else, then and you've got a 3-drop with or anything with 3 attack, you'll be fine, right? So it's not egregious, but I would say just probably a bit too powerful. Can fit in multiple decks. Well, you've got Scouts. You can play Pirate Aggro. I mean, you could play pretty much any aggro deck in Bilgewater with Misfortune. Can't you see anywhere else? I mean, I'm not sure. So maybe a sort of in that. It's kind of just always a bit aggressive. But okay. And Synergistic Champ Spell, Make It Rain. Again, it is synergistic because, of course, I think what they want to do, and if you look at the Siren, this is what they definitely wanted, was you play Misfortune and as you attack, you know, then can cast Make It Rain and potentially pick off the units without ever, you know, having dealt damage to Miss Fortune. So I'll say yes as well. All of that combined, I think I'm gonna put Miss Fortune in the B category. Yeah, somewhere in there. It's like it's fine. It's not great, but fine. And so we come to Garen. Does he make sense? Yes. Is he unique? Yes, I would say, you know, his level up and everything else is unique enough. Is he a build around card? Now this you could say, is Garen a build around card? You can build elites with him, which is kind of building around him, I guess, in a way. But I would say not really. And his level up condition isn't that interesting. Again, you can use stuff like single combat and concerted strike, but you know, I don't think they had those cards in mind. I mean, concerted strike came in after Garen came out, and single combat, the art is for Fiora and makes more sense with Fiora. And those are sort of the prime ways of leveling up Garen quickly. So I would say probably not as much. Powerful level up, the rally each turn is probably powerful enough. An average level 1, 5/5 regen is about average. So yeah, I'll give him that. Can fit in multiple decks. Again, you can build the all-in elite deck, but he's kind of just a... You can build all-in elites. You can go for like Plaza with him, but it's kind of much of the same. You can't really go aggro Garen as much. So I'll say not really. And synergistic champ spell with Judgment. Of course, it does strike multiple times. So I'll say that is a synergistic champ spell with Garen. So overall, what would I give Garen? I'm going to put Garen right next to his friend Darius. I feel like they, you know, were probably designed on the same day when, you know, creativity was probably lacking a bit. And so I think that's just the perfect home for them, right? And so we come to Gangplank, one of my favorite champions, I guess you could say. But we'll see where he ranks. Does he make sense? Can he play? Yes. Unique design? Yes. Build around card, interesting level condition. You certainly can build around Gangplank, you know, stuff like Monkey Idol, City Breaker even, you know, things that deal damage on sort of alternative turns, anything that deals direct nexus damage. Excuse me. Powerful level up, absolutely. Average level 1, I think, again, yes, a 5 mana 5/5 overwhelm that gets you a keg. Isn't anything special, I don't think. Can fit in multiple decks. Again, yes, you can play, you know, sort of a Dreadway slow deck with Thresh, but you can also play Pirate Aggro. You can play a mid-range deck with Gangplank. So I think he absolutely fits in multiple decks. And a synergistic champ spell. Parlay is a synergistic champ spell. It might not be the best champ spell for him, but I think it is synergistic because, you know, if you can kill a unit, you can deal damage to the Nexus and help level him up. So I'd say yes. Now, my issue with Gangplank is sort of the keg side of it seems not as synergistic as I'd want it to be. So I'm not going to put him at the very tippity top, but he did pass all of the tests, I think, pretty well. So I am going to put him in low S tier, I think. It could be high A tier. I'm going to put him in high A tier, I think, after consideration, because I don't like the fact that he doesn't synergize with the kegs that well. It feels like he should, but the keg is kind of just like a... Like, it synergizes with the level up, but not much else, if you know what I mean. So I'll put him in the top of A, I think. I think that's where he probably belongs. On to Hecarim, and this one should be interesting. We've got old Hecarim here, the old 4/6. So this is when Hecarim was at its absolute zenith and would have been very low on the list. But let's see what we do now. So, can it see play? I think yes. Unique design? Yes. Build around card, interesting level condition. I mean, you definitely can build around Hecarim and go in for the ephemeral synergy, right? And obviously stuff like Harrowing as well enables this. We see it even with the Grand Plaza decks. I think that kind of has enabled this whole thing to come to life with the ephemeral package. And so I'd say probably yes, that is good enough. Powerful level up. See, my problem with Hecarim's level up is that if you level up Hecarim and attack with him, that his riders go to the right-hand side of him, and so if they kill Hecarim, then they lose the ability. I really wish they would change that. it's powerful enough, I guess, but I really do wish they would change that so that it just like gave them, it was like grant the ephemerals the thing, you know, as soon as they're there and Hecarim sees them, it just grants them that. Now, of course, they die straight away because they're ephemeral anyway, right? But it's so that they cannot lose it even if Hecarim goes, because just the way that it attacks on the right, etc. It bugs me. Average level 1. Now, this was the problem with Hecarim in the past, was he was anything but an average level 1, which sounds shocking to probably newer players, but trust me, Hecarim is a 4-6, creating 2 3-2s at that point was absolutely crazy. Nowadays, I think, yes, we have reached the point where he probably is about an average level 1, and can fit in multiple decks. This one you can very much argue that he cannot fit in multiple decks. It's kind of, you know, Plaza Ephemerals or nothing really. That's kind of where we're at. So I'm not sure about that one. Yeah, I'm going to have to say probably not for can fit in multiple decks. But a synergistic champion spell. Of course, it's Onslaught of Shadows, which does give him more ephemerals to attack with. So I guess yes. It might not be what he needs, but I guess it is synergistic. So overall, I think I'm going to give Hecarim, he's like a low B or high C, I think. But I'll give him a low B, I think, overall. Because he is kind of unique and it fits within his own deck at least, and he makes sense there. C and below, I think, is for champions that like don't make sense within their own decks. Heimerdinger. Oh, Heimerdinger. Let's take a look. Card makes sense. Can he play? Absolutely. Unique design. I think Heimerdinger's design is probably one of the most unique in the game. He does something that's very, very different to pretty much every other card. Build around card, interesting level condition. Of course, you want spells, so again, I'm not going to penalize him too much, and the level condition is interesting itself. So I'm not going to... So, yeah, let's just say yes. Powerful level up. This is, again, where we come into this problem of the level up versus the average level 1. Heimerdinger's level 1 is pretty much as strong as Heimerdinger's level 2. In fact, the only thing that really matters from a Heimerdinger's level 1 to 2 is that it makes it more likely that Heimerdinger will stick on the board. Essentially, that's all that matters. And so I really have to penalize Heimerdinger quite harshly here for this. Can fit in multiple decks, of course. Pretty much any region, I think, could play Heimerdinger. Even like Demacia, Freljord, really anything could play Heimerdinger. And synergistic champ spell Progress, absolutely. So, where does Heimerdinger fit then? Well, these two, I think, are my biggest gripes with these things. But, unlike, I would say, Elise and Draven, Heimerdinger is much more interesting as a card. He forces you down a deck, at least. You know, he forces you to build a deck in a certain way. You can't just, you know, play the card on its own. So, for that reason, I'm going to put him in C, I think. In that he does suffer terribly the curse of 5 and 6, which is a big gripe of mine, but the rest of it is good enough to see him avoid the D category. Moving on to Jinx. Jinx. So let's go in. Card makes sense. Yes. Unique design. Yes. Build around card. Interesting level condition. Yes. Powerful level up. Yes. Average level 1. Yes. Can fit in multiple decks. This is where you could maybe get Jinx a bit. Of course, she has the discard aggro deck. You can play her in, like, we've seen some stuff with Bilgewater with Jinx. But not too much else, right? Well, you've seen Targon with Jinx as well. And I think that's the thing. I don't think it's necessarily Jinx's fault. I think it's more... if they introduce more and more discards, like if there's more discard in other regions, then I think Jinx would fit into those regions as well, and you could see different kind of decks with Jinx. Would they all have to be aggro decks, though? I guess that's the kind of point that I'm making here, is that they probably would to an extent. So I'll give her like yeah, And synergistic champ spell, get excited, very much so. So Jinx to me passed flying colors with every single one of these, apart from multiple decks. So for that reason, I'm probably going to put her right next to Ashe, because I think Ashe is kind of the same, but lesser extent to Jinx. I think Jinx is very well designed, apart from that one little flaw. So I'll put her at the bottom of S, I think. On to Kalista. Is Kalista... I was going to say flavorful, but of course we aren't doing flavor. Card makes sense because you play, yes, unique design. Is Kalista unique? I think so. When you think about what her level up does, I think, yeah, that's a unique design. Build round card, interesting level condition. The allies dying... It's not the most interesting thing, but it is a build round. You do want certain things. You want certain cards. You might go ephemerals with it. You might go, a certain way with it. You could also build around what her level up is, right? So, like, for instance, getting Wraithcaller summoned from Kalista to get the allegiance to then summon a Mistwraith is a synergy that I've seen people use, and of course that's a great build around example. So I'd say yes, powerful level up. Yeah. Very much so. Kalista leveling up is a threat. You often will want to remove Kalista. An average level 1, again, yes. And this is what I mean, right? Kalista is a 3-mana 4/3 fearsome. Again, this is the old version that says 4/2, but a 4/3 fearsome for 3. That's not like that's nothing special, right? And that's where I think compare that to Heimerdinger. Just compare. Kalista is a decent champion. And she's just a 3-mana 4/3, not leveled up. Compare that to... This is what I mean, like... This is my sort of rationale behind it. Like, compare that to... Just compare to Heimerdinger. Just for a second. So, anyway. Can fit in multiple decks. You can, of course, play Kalista and Endure. You can play aggro. You can play more mid-range. Of course, you can't really go, like, control with it. But you can get some combos in there as well. So I would say, yeah, just about, not like obvious, but just about. She's in the right region to make her flexible, right? If she was in a different region, then, I don't think she'd make much sense really. But being from Shadow Isles, there's enough death triggers in Shadow Isles to allow her to branch out, right? A synergistic champ spell, Black Spear. I mean, it does require an ally to die, so that is somewhat synergistic, but is Kalista obsessed with removal of things? A more synergistic option would, be something that killed your own units. I know Glimpse is a thresh sort of spell, but, that kind of thing. So sort of is what I'll give Kalista. So overall, I'd probably put her in A. There's some little things here that, aren't perfect. But overall, a very well-designed champion. So now we come to Karma. Karma, does the card make sense? Yes. Is it a unique design? Yes, the doubling spells thing I think is pretty unique. Build around card, interesting level condition. This is where I kind of get into it a bit, because of course Karma, is it an interesting level condition? You're enlightened. You've survived to turn 10. To me, that isn't interesting at all. And it's kind of been a big gripe of mine of Karma. It doesn't force your deck down any certain path. Like, yeah, you're going to be a control deck. And that's it. That's your build around. You're a control deck. Well, control can go, of course, in a million different ways. So it's not really that synergistic or interesting to me. And unlike Anivia, who is in the region of ramp, where, being enlightened makes sense, because in theory, you could have a bunch of, ramp on the board. You got a bunch of wording studs on the board. It gets you to turn 10, levels up Anivia. They all die, but your Anivia is already leveled up. That's not happening for Karma. For Karma, it's you're on turn 10. That's it. You survived to turn 10. Congratulations. So, no, I'm not having that. Powerful level up, absolutely. Average level 1, yeah, probably. Can fit in multiple decks, sort of. Of course, they are all going to be somewhat slow control / combo decks. So, sort of. Yeah. And synergistic champ spell, the Insight of Ages, does go with what Karma is trying to do, I suppose. It creates more spells, which essentially is free card draw, especially when enlightened. So yes, I suppose. So therefore, I think I have to put Karma below Anivia. So I think I'll put her in the top of C. The level up really gripes me in the fact that, you know, it's just bleh. Yeah, you know, who cares? Katarina. This one should be interesting. Card makes sense. Can it see play? Now, a lot of people will tell you that the answer is probably no to this. But let's think, does Katarina make sense as a card? Well, it gives you a permanent potential rally effect. I think there isn't enough support for Katarina, but I'm not sure it's Katarina's fault. I think there just isn't enough reason to play Katarina right now. For instance, if there was a deck that was screaming out for rally that wasn't in Demacia, and you know there was other Noxian cards that like were kind of like, look, this synergizes, let's say for Targon, right? Let's say there was a Targon deck that was screaming out for rally, you know, and had Noxus in there for Noxian reasons of being super aggressive, right? Like, could Katarina make sense if, you know, they printed the right cards? I think so, but it's kind of like a maybe, right? But I think it's more of a power level thing. I think if you make Katarina 2 mana on the front side and kept her at 4 mana on the you know, flip side, then things would be fine. Honestly, I think Katarina would then just see play, and people would probably, you know, forget that Katarina ever was considered unplayable. So I think that the card makes sense. Unique design. The permanent rally effect, of course, is very unique, so I would say yes. Build around card, interesting level condition. Now, this is where you can bring Katarina down for sure, because, yeah, you want kind of like an aggressively slanted deck that sticks on the board, but again, it's similar to Draven, where Katarina is kind of self-contained, where all she has to do is strike, and then that's it, and then, you know, you're done. Well done, you leveled her up, you attacked. So I would say no for that. Powerful level up. The potential for rally effects on multiple turns is a threat. Average level 1, yes. Perhaps 2 average. Can fit in multiple decks. Again, you could probably say that Katarina probably can't fit in multiple decks. You know, you could play her in like a Demacia Noxus kind of deal. You can play her in maybe like a Freljord Noxus kind of thing. That might be somewhat interesting to try out. But not too many decks. Synergistic champ spell, again, absolutely not. This is like, you know, probably the worst example where Death Lotus just doesn't make any sense. So I think Katarina, therefore, probably comes down here with the Fizzes of the world in the high D. On to Lee Sin. So, does he make sense? Yes. Is he a unique design? Yes. Is he a build around card? Interesting level condition. Again, you know, I said this about Fizz, like the spells is like, meh. Yeah, it's not super interesting, but it does kind of, you know, it forces your deck somewhat down a certain, you know, you're not just going to play a bunch of units. So it does force you down a certain tree. So I can't say no, but, you know, I'm not thrilled by it either. Powerful level up, absolutely. Average level 1, probably above an average level 1, I would think. You know, the barrier thing with the challenger is just a strong ability anyway. So I would say two a bit above average there in terms of his level up. Not level up, level 1. Can fit in multiple decks. Can you play Lee Sin anywhere else? What other region would you play Lee Sin with? I guess Noxus. You know, we saw some experimentation with the Riven, so maybe, sort of. Synergistic champ spell, I mean, Sonic Wave, of course, is. So, man, there's some things that I'm, like, you know, not too happy with about Lee Sin, so I think I'm going to put him in, like, middle B, like an average, you know, fine, whatever, right? On to Leona. So, can she play? Yes. Unique design. Of course, she's the only Daybreak champion, so I have to assume it's somewhat unique. level up stunning a bunch of things. Yeah, that's a unique design. Build around card, interesting level condition. Again, the Daybreak is you know, you can't just put Leona in a deck with no Daybreak, right? Like, you have to run the other Daybreak cards. So yes, powerful level up. You could get on Leona here for it not being that powerful a level up, but I think over time, particularly for the type of deck she sees plays in, I would think that yes, it is probably just about powerful enough. And an average level 1, you know, I mean, essentially it's an Arachnoid Sentry with extra stats that you have to play at the start of the turn. So yeah, about average. And can fit in multiple decks. This is where you potentially get on Leona a bit, but you could play Leona Yasuo, you could play Leona Swain, you can play, of course, Leona with like the Targon's Peak and the deck that is kind of popular right now. So Leona can probably fit in enough different type of decks and synergies to make it work. And a synergistic champ spell is Morning Light, which I think if you go for an all-in Daybreak deck, and, you know, one day, I mean, we just saw another Daybreak card come out. Like, it's possible that they could go, you know, full, just, you know, print a Daybreak card each time, right? And more will come out. And maybe you could just build a full Daybreak deck. So I think, yes, Synergistic Champ Spell is pretty good. So overall, therefore, I would give Leona probably like a low A, maybe mid A. Let's put her in A for now. And so we come on to Lucian. Let's dive straight in. Kind of card to play. Yes, unique design. Is Lucian a unique design? Yeah, Lucian is unique. I think, you know, the whole death thing with the rally, especially the Senna thing of his design, right, is very unique. You know, I don't think any other champion names another card on it, but Lucian does. So I think, yes. Build around card, interesting level condition. Now, you could sort of go about this two ways. The death side of it kind of is. The Senna side of it, you know, isn't that much of a build around. Like, I'll put Senna in your deck and Glimpse or Butcher. So I guess it is just about enough of a build around to make Lucian pass that test. But, you know, it's not like, it's not the most, like, you know, it's not passing with flying colors. It's a pass. Powerful level up, absolutely. Average level 1, absolutely. Can fit in multiple decks. This is where you can get on Lucian. You can kind of play him in, you know, obviously there's like Shadow Isles decks, right? That you can play Lucian in. You can potentially play him with Noxus and kind of just an aggro deck, a generic kind of Noxian, Demacian aggro deck. We've seen him with Scouts as well. So I guess he can fit in multiple decks. You know, any sort of aggressively slanted Demacian deck, Lucian is always going to be a consideration, I suppose. And a synergistic champ spell, Relentless Pursuit. Excuse me. Yes. Yeah, I would say yes. So overall, where do I put Lucian then? I think I might put him at the bottom of A. I'm not thrilled with like the level condition. Not the level condition, like the kind of build around aspect of Lucian. But the rest of it, you know, he fits very well, and I can't deny that. And next up is Lulu. Lulu is one of, again, my favorite champions. So let's see how this goes. Card makes sense within support. I think yes, the card makes sense. Unique design. Yeah, again, Lulu kind of does something, you know, completely unique. There's no other way to put it, really. Build around card, interesting level condition. Again, forces you into a sort of, not forces you, but, you know, pushes you down the road of, you know, you have to have some probably other support cards in there. You know, you're not just going to throw Lulu into a random deck. Powerful level up. Now, some of you might, who maybe haven't played with Lulu enough, you know, think that, you know, she doesn't see play, so that's probably not a powerful level up. But I think when you level up Lulu and you get the help picks every turn, it kind of just gives you complete ownership of combat. Like giving some, like, if you think about Bright Steel Protector, right? When someone drops a Bright Steel Protector on you and all of a sudden you can't do anything, well, imagine if that was like burst speed every turn. Like, it's a very powerful effect. It seems so minimal, but it is a really, really powerful effect. And an average level 1, I think, we can all agree that that's, you know, at any 3-mana 2/3, unless it does something absolutely crazy, is probably going to be an average level 1. Can fit in multiple decks. You can go support with Targon. You can go support with Demacia. You can go support with PNZ. Really, anything with a small challenger has a chance with Lulu. You know, there probably isn't enough other support cards in the game in other regions to you know, make her make sense in a lot of other decks. So I would say, like, well, actually, I'm gonna say yes, because you can build Lulu as an aggro or mid-range champion. So I'm gonna say that yes, you can. Lulu can fit in multiple kind of decks. Synergistic champ spell. Whimsy doesn't really synergize with Lulu. It kind of does a bit because she's a very combat-focused champion and that can help you with combat. But it's not really like helping with the support aspect of it. I'm almost surprised they didn't print a card that was like summon picks. You know what I mean? Like, I thought that would kind of be her champ spell. You know, like a 1-mana spell, summon picks. I think would be absolutely fine. And I'm kind of surprised that they didn't. So with that said, let's think. Where would we put Lulu? I think I would put Lulu in... Ooh. I think I'm going to put her in A again. With Lucian there. She kind of, like, you know, passes most of them, but could be a little limited in other aspects as well. So I'm going to put her in A. And I think that's actually where I'm going to end it for today. This is going to be a 2-part special, and the second part is going to come tomorrow. So we still have all these champions to look forward to. This is what we look like right now. I'm very excited to see your opinions on some of these. Some of these down at the bottom, I think these two, you know, most people would probably agree with. These two, I think people would probably have more of an issue with. But again, going off my criteria, I think that, you know, this is a pretty fair rating overall. So with that said, I've been Chris. I'll be back tomorrow with, you know, the finishing of this tier list as we go through sort of the second half. I'm pretty sure I've done about half of them now. So we're going to go through the second half in tomorrow's video, and I will see you next time.